Right now, on the world stage, it feels like the United States is speaking with two completely different voices. And this isn't just a simple mix-up in messaging. We're talking about a deep institutional divide that is actively changing the game for global security. So let's dive in and really unpack what's going on here.
All right, to really get this, you have to look at the two key documents driving U.S. policy. On one hand, you've got the White House's national security strategy. That's the administration's official playbook, and it's pushing hard for a fast peace deal in Ukraine. But on the other hand, you have the National Defense Authorization Act. That's a law passed by Congress that locks in $800 million in weapons for Ukraine. You've literally got the executive and legislative branches pulling in completely opposite directions.
And this, right here, is the absolute key. This isn't some simple spat between America and its European partners. Nope, this is an institutional battle happening right inside Washington, D.C. It's this internal power struggle between two branches of the U.S. government, and it's having huge consequences for alliances all over the world.
So we're going to frame this as Washington's two competing foreign policies. Let's see what each side is really trying to do.
Okay, first up, let's look at the White House's play. It's a strategy built entirely on a philosophy of making quick, transactional deals to get conflicts over with.
So this table really lays out the administration's game plan. The number one thing is speed. They're aiming for a deal in just 100 days. And how do they get there? Well, it's all about transactional deal-making, using aid as a big stick to force concessions. The rationale is pretty clear. The U.S. should focus on its own resources, Europe needs to shoulder more of the burden, and hey, if that means Ukraine has to make some painful territorial compromises, well, that's seen as a necessary price to pay.
Now, this whole strategy isn't just abstract. It has a very specific and, let's be honest, pretty controversial proposal at its core, the Donbas Compromise. The idea is for Ukraine to pull its forces back from parts of the east to create a kind of buffer zone. But as President Zelensky himself pointed out, if one side pulls back and the other doesn't, what's stopping them from just rolling forward? It's a huge question.
And look, this isn't just talk. We've actually seen this play out. The administration put a temporary halt on all military aid to Ukraine, specifically to pressure Kyiv into agreeing to a partial ceasefire. This is what using leverage looks like in its most raw, direct form.
Okay, so that's the White House's strategy. But, and this is a big but, it's only one side of the coin. Now we've got to look at the powerful institutional pushback coming from the U.S. Congress and its allies.
And here, you can see the complete opposite philosophy at work. Instead of speed, the word is sustainability, locking in support for the long haul. Instead of quick deals, the strategy is about deterrence, making NATO and the entire alliance structure stronger. And instead of forcing territorial compromises, the goal is to defend Ukraine's sovereignty, period.
And you know, Congress didn't just write a strongly worded letter. It put its money where its mouth is and put its commitment into law. The National Defense Authorization Act guarantees $800 million in security aid for Ukraine, locking it in for 2 full years.
But it didn't stop there. That same law makes it illegal for the administration to drop U.S. troop levels in Europe below 76,000 without jumping through some serious hoops. This is Congress literally drawing a line in the sand, using the law to put a direct check on the president's power. You can see the difference right here. Aid from the executive branch, it can be unpredictable, right? Turned on and off like a faucet. But the aid from Congress, that's locked in by law. It creates a stable, protected pipeline of support that can't just be shut off on a whim.
So you have this deep divide happening in Washington, and it had this totally surprising, you could even say historic ripple effect across the Atlantic.
So you have to ask, right? With all this strategic whiplash coming out of Washington, did Europe just freeze up? Did the alliance start to crack under the pressure?
The answer? A huge, resounding no. Actually, the exact opposite happened. It lit a fire under European defense spending. Now the European Union collectively outspends Russia by more than 3-to-1. To put a hard number on it, we're talking a projected 381 billion euros on defense from the EU this year alone. I mean, think about that. That is a record-breaking number, a truly massive strategic shift.
So this is the big twist in the story, right? The unpredictability coming from its main ally didn't weaken Europe. It actually forced them to hit the accelerator on building their own strategic autonomy.
So where does all this leave us? After this huge institutional clash, what's the new reality on the ground? What are the consequences that are basically locked in now?
Well, the result is a pretty fundamental change to the transatlantic alliance. It's becoming less centralized, European nations are acting with more independence, and crucially, support for Ukraine is now way less about who's president and way more about institutions like the U.S. Congress and European budgets. NATO itself is adapting to a new reality where American support might come with conditions.
This really is the bottom line. The whole foundation for European security, it's not built on the shifting sands of a president's promises anymore. It's now anchored in something much more solid, actual laws and budgets.
And that leaves us with this one last, really powerful idea to think about. An administration strategy can change with the political winds, sure, but the alliances on the ground, they're adapting way faster to this new, more complicated world. The big question isn't just what Washington will do anymore. It's what Washington can do, especially when its own key institutions are pulling in completely different directions.